Welcome back, everyone. In this week's episode, we'll be exploring this absurdly beautiful spot in central New York State and talk about why reviewing your images is so important. Let's get started.
There's a place, a garden for the young, to laugh and dance in safety among the shimmering light and the shade of the trees. Steal a bite and paradise is lost. With darkened hearts we didn't count the cost, forgot all we left behind. Life picks up speed before you know, we hold on for dear life, oh Lord. We're too proud to turn back now. One day it all falls down and breaks our heart, and it breaks our crown, brings us down where we sit. It's gonna be alright. Turn around and let back in the light, and joy will come like a bird in the morning sun.
What an absolutely beautiful place. 𝐒𝐤𝐚𝐫 State Park in New York. If you don't know about it, well, this is it. This is the shot. It's infinitely famous. I knew about this shot. Honestly, it feels like before I even started shooting photography. I don't know why, but this has been in my mind for half my life, it feels like. And it is currently 7 o'clock. I wanted to rush over here and get this shot in the bag. Not doing anything special. I mean, the composition kind of just makes itself. You've got these nice flowing waterfall right here, this cascading falls here, and this stony bridge here. There's not really anything to explain about that. I'm taking the most basic composition you possibly can of this shot because I've always wanted to get it in the bag. The other technical aspects, I'm shooting at f8. I'm prioritizing my shutter speed to be about 1/4 of a second to get some nice flow in the water, but not too soft. But then I'm also bracketing the shot so I can recover some of the highlights up here because the sun is coming up, as you can tell. Just a pretty standard shot here. I wanted to get here, take the shot, and then now I'm gonna walk around and look for more particular shots, more intimate shots, shots that might stand out or you might not know that they're from here. But I wanted to get this shot in the bag and I wanted to talk to you because I don't necessarily know how much I'm gonna be able to talk as more people get here. The crowds can be pretty crazy. I did wait until the weekday purposely so that I could take these shots without worrying about too many people early in the morning here. But I feel like this shot kind of speaks for itself. We're gonna continue on, see what else we can get up to. I'll take a few more shots of this. And thanks for joining along. Thanks for checking out my journey here in 𝐒𝐤𝐚𝐫. And yeah, I mean, it just doesn't get better than this.
And all will be made well once again.
As predicted, it got exponentially busier, but before leaving that main shot, I checked what time the sun would be hitting the falls for sunset later, which you'll see is highly important for the resulting image later in this video.
There's a way that seems right to a man, till he's in overhead and he don't understand how the plans he made only led him astray. But every good gift come down from above, from the Lord alive.
The light in the gorge was rapidly changing, with many spots already being too bright and harsh while others were still in complete shadow. I started to pay attention to that contrast and use it to my advantage, focusing a bit on the suspended foliage and how it was catching light throughout the gorge. This was a perfect time to switch from my wide-angle lens to the 70-200.
Sometimes you find what you're waiting for, it's all along just waiting for you to turn around and reconcile. That it may be broken down, all the bridges burn like an old ghost town. But this, my son, can be made new, 'cause it's gonna be all.
I must admit, this spot feels a bit unreal. It's almost like I'm walking through a movie set with stone bridges, spiral staircases leading to tunnels of waterfalls, and overall just a magical little spot to experience. It makes sense why it's so famous.
And joy will come like a bird in the morning sun, where all will be made well once again.
Continuing to utilize the high contrast within the gorge as the light was reaching unusable levels, I found lines of light creating deep shadows within my scenes while highlighting touches of color within the foliage, which made for some nice results.
Alright, shade out, let back in the light, and joy will come like a bird in the morning sun, and all will be made well.
The light eventually got too harsh to capture anything worthwhile, and I hiked back up to start my day as it was only around 8:30 a.m. I spent the majority of my day working in a frigid, cold Dunkin' Donuts editing, which is why I'm wearing a jacket, too, actually. This is where I took the time to review my images, which I'll talk more about in a bit, but first we gotta get back to the gorge for sunset.
Your heart to me. Every single scar is a masterpiece. You only see the dark, but I see the seeds. The singing away there.
You'll notice it's a bit busier this time around, although this was still pretty light overall, and I can only imagine what this place is like packed with people. No, thank you. I arrived, switched lenses, and set up my composition. Remember earlier in the video where I said this composition was pretty straightforward? Well, in hindsight, there was much more to it than I envisioned. Mainly in deciding how wide to frame the image. How much of the canyon wall did I want to include, knowing I'd likely crop some of it out, but also recognizing its importance in balancing elements within the shot. How much of the bottom pool would I want to include, knowing that it's mostly just a dark spot with little detail, yet might still be vital in balancing the top and bottom of the frame. How much of the corridor before the falls did I want to include as well? These were all things I questioned when framing my shot that morning, and ones I could only really answer by reviewing my results. So, in reviewing my compositions, I realized that just because I could walk up to a scene and snap a decent looking image without much intuition, it doesn't mean I couldn't improve upon aspects in the image by really reflecting on what was important within that scene. I noticed that if I moved left and compressed all the elements together, it meant I could fit more of what's important in a nicer square part of the image, but I wasn't happy with how it removed any sense of depth from the cascading falls that are under the bridge. Notice how the falls are oriented in a nearly vertical line here, whereas by moving just a few steps back to the right, it provides a bit more dimension to those falls. It's these little details and choices that end up strengthening a composition. For example, I tried shooting this comp vertically multiple times, specifically because if you notice, all my important elements are in the center of the frame, and having the pool at the bottom with more foliage on the top could enhance my image. That isn't the case though, in my opinion. While the canyon walls caught in the landscape orientation don't have significant detail in them, heck, the right side of the frame is actually mostly in shadow. But it's that shadow that's necessary to contrast with the light rays within the falls. Those details provide more balance to the elements within the image and were definitely things I wanted to have access to when it came time to crop my image within the edit. After shooting sunset, I actually ended up returning again the next day with even more knowledge from reviewing my images. While I had a good idea of what I wanted in my composition, I wasn't quite sure what moment of light would work best. It turns out that there's a very brief window where the light spotlights from the bottom to the top of the falls in equal harmony. Any image taken after that moment just wasn't as strong, and I wanted to make sure I captured exactly that. Thus, I returned and photographed the same composition at the perfect moment. Let's drive home just how much composition matters for this image. I captured this framing with crops in mind, but take a look at just how many ways you can change this image with a crop. Here, you have the subjects weighting down each portion of the image, with me standing on the left, the brightest and largest subject directly in the center, and the right cascading falls to counter me being in the image, creating a nice equal balance throughout the image. What's interesting is that if the more you crop from the right side, the more I become a stronger subject with the image, with less emphasis on the waterfall, even though all we're really doing is cropping out the shadowy area on the right side of the frame. What about that vertical crop that I mentioned earlier? We can still accomplish that as well. We could even remove me from the image, and then the balance has to be completely reworked. I could spend hours dwelling on the different crops for this image, which is exactly why I captured it the way that I did, because now I can tell different stories all within the same capture. This wouldn't have been possible without reviewing my images and improving upon what I mistakenly called simple to start off this video with. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into talking composition and how little nuances of decisions might matter in your images. It's important to recognize none of us are perfect, and many times you aren't going to get the shot the first time you take it. Reviewing your images on a big screen, seeing details you simply can't see on the back of your camera, and finding out what works will continually improve your skills as a photographer. As always, you can like this video if you liked it, consider subscribing if you loved it, and there's got to be some rainbows out there somewhere. We even saw some within this video. I'll see you on the next one. Later.